Welcome everybody back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's video, we're going to be talking about a Luis Castillo rumor. However, before we get into that stuff, we are going to talk a little bit about Roe versus Wade. I know this is a lot of people's outlet for only Padres stuff. If you do not want to listen to this kind of part, we will be putting a timestamp below, so you feel free to skip ahead if you don't want to listen. However, we feel like this is something where we have a voice, we have a platform, and we do want to share our opinions on that. Even though we don't do this very often, this isn't something we usually don't get into politics and stuff like that. However, this was a lot different. This kind of hit a lot harder for us three. So we wanted to share our views on it and our opinions. If you guys don't agree, if you don't want to listen, totally fine. Totally get that. However, we do feel like this is kind of our right to do that. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. Feel free to skip ahead if you do not want to listen to what we have to say. Chase, do you want to kind of lead off and kind of get into some of the stuff you wanted to bring up about it?
Yeah, first, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that you take a precedent for the past 50 years and just throw it out the window. I mean, this affects much more than just reproductive rights because a few of the Supreme Court justices are now going to look at things for contraceptive same-sex marriage. And if you get rid of same-sex marriage, it's also going to lead to interracial marriage, which it's a whole can of worms that the Supreme Court should have just left alone. I mean, it's no one's business what a woman does with her body. Everybody was saying my body, my choice when it came to vaccines. Why isn't it the same way for women to get an abortion? I know some people's religions and beliefs don't go along with abortions, but then just don't get one. It's as simple as that. You don't need to take away the rights of other people. It's just not right. You can disagree with it, but still allow it to happen. If you personally do not believe in it, you do not have to get one. But do not subject other people to your same beliefs when they do not believe the same thing. This country is supposed to be the land of the free, freedom of religion, freedom of everything. And you're taking away people's reproductive rights. It's a little ironic, don't you think? I think the Supreme Court made a horrible decision. Everybody needs to do their best to be an ally to women, the LGBTQ community, everybody, because this decision has a lot of ripple effects and we don't know where it's going to go from here.
Yeah, to all any women listeners, any current mothers, future mothers, if you're a little girl that listens, I doubt you're a little girl that listens to the Padres podcast, but I'm sorry that this is what you have to go through in today's society. It's a step backwards in society that I honestly never thought would be taken. It was unforeseen for me. I don't follow politics to a massive extent or anything, but this is something that I've been following more relative than other politics, and us men have a duty. Us men have a duty as helping them, being on their side and showing them our support. It doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much to show them how much we support them. Think of your mothers, think of your daughters. They need the support that they deserve the support, I think. So I mean, that's all I really have to say on it. I'm sorry to the women that have to go through this. This is not a society I want maybe my future daughters to live in, my future nieces, whatever it is. And I hope change comes sooner rather than later, because it's a tough day. It is really a tough day. We question whether we should make an episode today. But we just wanted to talk about it, and we think that there absolutely has to be change, and we're sorry that women still have to go through things that women of the past try to change so much.
Yeah, and I'm gonna echo the same things as Chase and Isaac. And if you guys don't know, I have three little sisters. Got raised a lot by my mom and grandma. Also have a dad that I'm very close with as well. But a lot of women in my life, and I called my sisters this morning about it. And I'm on the East Coast, they're on the West Coast, so I kind of broke the news to them. And it's a tough spot for them, and they're very confused. They're like, does it make any sense? Why is this happening? To our age group, when we look at, for instance, my grandma. They're the ones who went through the process of having this change, so people could do it. And I know that some people don't agree with abortions. I completely understand, and I get where you're coming from in that. But like Chase mentioned, you don't have to be the person to go get the abortion. But there's a lot of reasons why they make sense. If a woman is raped, she should not have to bear that child, and that's what this is saying that she has to do. And that's honestly disgusting. That is terrible. So that's something where it's that one's really tough for me to kind of swallow on this one. And also we're three guys talking about it, so it's not the best thing. Like, we don't understand what a pregnancy looks like, what it feels like, what you're going through. But like you mentioned too, Isaac, our job as men in this situation is kind of be the people that stand by and be supportive. And this is just a tough spot to be in there, because it's like, how are you supposed to be supportive when laws are going in the wrong direction to not support women? So it's really tough. It's a big bummer, I think, for a lot of people, like just looking on it. I know there's in New York today, there's going to be protests. I'm sure there's protests all around. If there's something you're passionate about, something you want to make an impact in, I think you can do it by kind of like, help and kind of going to that stuff. But at the same time, it's like, why are we doing this? We have other issues. Our economy is about to hit a recession. Anyone in the working class understands that a lot of bad things happen to the working class. We are exploited a lot. But we're worried about something that is simple as, that we had already resolved 50 years ago. And now we're going and we're backtracking and working on these things instead of working on our future problems and global warming and things like that. So it's really frustrating for me, but it's really unfortunate that we do have to bring this up, because like I said, we didn't even know about if we wanted to make an episode today. We didn't really know how we wanted to go about this. But it's definitely a tough one that hits home for, I think, all three of us, because we all three have women in our lives that are very important, and this is something that impacts their lives greatly. So I think that's probably all we're going to say on that. So if you guys want to share your thoughts or anything like that, feel free to. Very open space. Now, if we're going to get like hateful stuff and stuff like that, we'll probably just delete your comment, or I don't know what we'll do. But there's not really a space to do that. So we're trying to have a productive conversation here. But I think that will do it for that. Let's get into Luis Castillo. Luis Castillo is a guy that we have talked about in the past quite a bit. Chase, I know you are a big fan of him as a starting pitcher. He's had a pretty good year here. He has a year and a half left of control. So the half year this year, then next year. I find this trade to be very interesting. If it does indeed happen, John Heyman was the one that tweeted about the rumors there. We know John Heyman has not exactly been the most accurate guy in the past, but Luis Castillo is also a guy that I think we brought up a little bit last year as a potential trade candidate, but then the Reds were kind of flirting with a playoff berth, so they ended up not moving him. Now they're looking at it. The Reds are not anywhere close to being a playoff team. They could potentially move him. I think the price would be pretty hefty because he's a damn good player. But Chase, what do you feel about the Padres potentially landing Luis Castillo? We'll come back around and I'll talk about like the kind of more of like what the trade would look like, what it would mean for the Padres. But just Luis Castillo, how do you feel about him?
I love the idea. I mean, the Padres have been connected to Luis Castillo for a long time. If anyone doesn't remember, it was during the Colin Ray trade kind of back in 2015, 2016 when they first acquired him. It was right after around the time we got Paddock, due to Colin Ray having a slightly torn UCL and requiring Tommy John. The Marlins claimed it was mischief, and they got Luis Castillo back before he was then later to the Reds. So AJ Preller has a long history of liking Luis Castillo. Obviously, if anyone has followed his career, he has been, like Matt said, a damn pitcher. I will pull up his baseball savant page right here. And if you look at it, this year he's kind of having an average year, but his fastball velocity is still up there. His barrel percentage is up there. Everything else is around above average, and he's still having a pretty solid year. 3.71 ERA is great, but it's not bad when you consider where he pitches at. I mean, we all call it the Great American Small Park. He comes back to he comes over here to San Diego. I guarantee you his numbers increase. He doesn't get as many home runs hit off of him. Probably gets a lot of less base hits. It's just going to be great. I think he'd be a great addition. I don't know where exactly he'd be in the rotation or anything, but he's an upgrade. He's only making $7.35 this year. He'd be cheaper than Snell. Like Matt said, he would have the control next year. He'd go through arbitration where you can either give him a 1-year deal or possibly sign him to a multi-year deal, depending on where that's at, which I think is a fantastic option considering he's one of the cheaper premium pitchers on the market. Because after this year, like we mentioned, you could potentially lose 3 or 4 starters. Having him there would provide some stability within the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a trade or the interest in Luis Castillo could mean a couple different things, and we'll talk about that when we come back around. But just talking about Luis Castillo, if he wasn't on the Reds, we'd be talking about him being one of the more fun pitchers in baseball to watch. He is a very fun pitcher to watch. And like Chase said, his numbers are definitely going to be inflated playing in Cincinnati. But outside of that, you look at it and it's like, He's doing really good this year. His expected ERA is actually lower than what it is. It's a expected ERA of 3.6. So he's actually pitching a little better than the ERA shows. But other than that, his hard hit percentage is where around where it's been his whole career. Same with K percentage, except for 1 year where he had in 2020 30.5 K percentage. This year's down to 23, but still pretty good. I mean, overall, he's a great pitcher with a 4-pitch mix. The 4-pitch mix consists of a changeup, sinker, fastball, and slider. And the good thing about that 4-pitch mix is that he's not throwing one pitch way more than the other. It's like a 25% for each of them. He's throwing them all with consistency for strikes. It's not like I don't mean like bash Mackenzie Gore or anything. I love Mackenzie Gore, but Mackenzie Gore is throwing a fastball like 60-70% of the time. And that's going to change as time goes, as he ages and as he matures into a better pitcher. But as of right now, with this 4-pitch mix, I like it when people have a diverse pitch mix and they're able to throw them all for strikes and with consistent velocity. He's a very fun pitcher to watch. It was very unfortunate that he slipped out of our hands because that would have been a really good deal. But yeah, like you said, Chase, AJ Preller has been in on this guy for a little while now. There's a couple guys that we know AJ Preller really likes all throughout their careers. Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo is the guy that we always talk about for AJ Preller. Now, Luis Castillo, he is an upgrade over somebody. I mean, whether it be Nick Martinez and I mean, like I said, we'll get back around, but he would be a very fun pitcher. He'd be such a good pitcher for this Padres team, especially in Petco Park, a pitcher-friendly park, and unfortunately, one of the worst hitting environments in baseball right now. A very heavily favored pitcher's park. He'd be great for our team.
Yeah, I mean, he's a stud. He has like, what is his career ERA? It's a 3.7. No, that's his FIP. 3.74 FIP career. His career ERA is a 3.71. So very, very similar. But also, Chase, you brought it up. Great American Small Park. That is going to inflate those numbers quite a bit. And also, you talk about the Padres adding him. Going from Cincinnati to San Diego in terms of those two stadiums is a huge difference because the Padres Stadium, you don't really see balls go out of the yard that much. So I do think it would, in terms of his numbers, I do think his ERA would go down, his overall numbers would improve. But he also this year has a 1.1 whip, putting up solid numbers, strikes out a good amount of people. He's a solid starter. He's a solid 3-4 starter. And Isaac, you brought it up. He's a guy that AJ Preller has been linked to and has liked a lot. So I definitely think there's a possibility in this trade. But like we were saying, it means that someone's on the way out. And when I'm looking at what his role would be, I think it has to be a starter. I don't know if you guys know this. Luis Castillo has only ever started a game in the MLB. Every single game he's played in, he has started. If you go through all of he has 132 appearances, 132 starts. He will be a starter. Now, what does that mean for this team? Well, you already have a bunch of options right now in your starting rotation, right? That's the surplus. It means that someone has to be on the way out. It doesn't make any sense if that's not the case. And you start looking through, okay, Darvish, no. Musgrove, no. Minaya, very unlikely just because Minaya is on a half-year deal. It doesn't really make much sense that you would trade for him and then move him half a year later. I guess maybe, but don't really think it's very likely. Mackenzie Gore, not a chance. Mike Clevenger, same situation as Minaya, I feel like. So it leaves you with two guys, I think, that could potentially get moved. Blake Snell and Nick Martinez. I don't think it's Blake Snell because your only other lefty then in your starting rotation would be Mackenzie Gore. We expect the Padres to use some sort of innings limit on him. It sounds like it's going to be 140 innings. But if you don't have him, you're going to have 5 righty starters. That's a little sus to go with. So I think that it probably makes the most sense if they do go in and entertain a deal for Luis Castillo to also have a corresponding trade where they move Nick Martinez or a 3-team deal where Nick Martinez is moved. Nick Martinez is not going to be a Red. The Padres are not going to trade one of their starters to the Reds. It doesn't make any sense. However, they could make a deal for Luis Castillo and then make a separate move to trade away Nick Martinez. So I think that's what this is kind of saying. Maybe Blake Snell is involved too. Maybe Minaya, like I said. I just don't think it's really likely of the other guys. I think the odd man out in this case, if they are looking to add Luis Castillo, is Nick Martinez. But what do you guys think about that? And is there any kind of like deal in mind that you have? I'm not really quite sure what the Luis Castillo deal would look like right now, but anything that kind of comes to your mind when we bring up that.
So even if they don't get rid of Martinez, they can probably just store Martinez in the bullpen and more be a move for the future because, we are losing a combination of Musgrove, Clevenger, or Mania next year. So it could be one of those moves where he comes in and replaces one of those guys and he gets used as like a starter, and then Mackenzie Gore comes in as the reliever, or he comes in as an opener for Luis Castillo. I can see it working both ways where we can keep Martinez and then just give up prospects, and I think that is what makes sense the most. But if you do trade one of your starters, I think it does have to be Martinez. He has an opt-out option after every single year. He's only making $5 million. It would be a $2 million difference. You would be spending a little bit more money, but you would be upgrading majorly in the pitching department, especially in the starting rotation. And you would also be able to limit Mackenzie Gore's innings, like you said, to be around 140 innings. So around that, depends on how the pitching market starts off. Because if we go based off last year's trades for pitchers, we're going to have to give up a lot. Last year's pitching market was insane. We saw Jose Barrios go for a lot. We saw Max Scherzer go for a lot. And we saw a few other pitchers go for a lot. Luis Castillo has a mid to high 3 ERA as of right now. If he goes on a stretch where he goes back to how he was in 2017, 2018, and 2019, where he lowers it to a low 3s, I think we'd have to give up maybe 2 top 10 prospects, maybe an MLB, like maybe Grisham, if you decide to go that route, because then you can always trade for another bat to replace Grisham. But an MLB player and at least 2 top 10 prospects just for Luis Castillo.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the trade market options, but no, I think you're right, Chase. I think there's another pitcher that's on the trade market, Frankie Montas. I think he's going to be very expensive, and I think Luis Castillo is the next best option. I think Frankie Montas is he's going to set the market. Same thing as last year, where I forgot who set the market. It was one of the more absurd pitchers markets I've seen in a while. It was definitely a seller's market. I think this year is going to be another seller's market. There's not a lot of options when it comes to bats. There's not a lot of options when it comes to pitchers. Now, there's always going to be quite a few options when it comes to relievers, because relievers are the easiest thing to acquire at the deadline. But I truly do think this is going to be a seller's market. I'm not in favor of acquiring Luis Castillo, but what it does, and like I said, I think Luis Castillo is a great player. But just because I think he's a great player doesn't mean I think he fits the Padres roster needs right now, nor their timeline. If you shouldn't get rid of Blake Snell, I think we're all on board with that. I'm not sure, but you would only have one lefty if you get rid of Blake Snell, and that's Mackenzie Gore. And I'm not saying this is for sure. Let's say Mackenzie Gore continues to struggle and he needs to get sent down. You have no lefties, which is a very bad thing. And I'm fully confident Mackenzie Gore will bounce back. Maybe not to the same guy we saw his first couple of starts, but around his expected ERA, which is around like a 3.5. I believe it's a 4 right now, but that just ballooned so heavily because of his last 2 starts. No, it just doesn't make sense to get rid of a lefty, especially he's got the same amount of control as Luis Castillo. What are you getting out of him? You're only saving like $6 million. In arbitration, he's probably going to make like 9 or 10, so it's only an extra couple mil. I think it's absolutely worth it to keep the lefty, especially considering Blake Snell, his career numbers after the All-Star break, we've mentioned it numerous times, are great. That's a guy you want to keep post All-Star break. So the only corresponding move I could think of is Nick Martinez, who makes $5 million, and essentially, if he starts doing bad, let's say he starts doing bad, he's going to opt back into his contract, and there we are stuck with another bad contract. Now, if he keeps doing good, he's going to opt in. I mean, I don't know. I really do think it's a lose-lose for the Padres. I think hopefully hopefully he does good. If he does good, he's going to opt out from the Padres. But if he does good for another team, he opts out for the other team. It really doesn't make sense to keep him around, I think. He's a cool pitcher. He's a good pitcher. Nothing against him. He would be a good pitcher out of the bullpen also, but I just don't think I just think he is the most likely to get traded, because it really wouldn't make sense to carry 8 starters at all. When the resources you use in a Luis Castillo trade could be used to go get an outfielder. You shouldn't trade resources in that trade that could be used to go elsewhere. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. He's a great player. I just don't think he's a player that we need. I think we have much bigger needs than a starting pitcher. That also could mean they're not confident that they can get a Musgrove deal done. They're not confident they can get a Clevenger deal done. They're trying to go get another righty for next year. But if we're going just based off what we think right now, I do think Clevenger will be back in a Padres uniform. I do think Musgrove will be back in a Padres uniform. Not so confident in Manaea, but essentially you still have 2 lefties next year in Gore and Snell. So not really much of a loss, but yeah, that's all I got to say on Castillo.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't really think it makes that much sense from Padres' perspective. Chase, you bring up like how much it would cost. I don't know how much more it would cost outside of adding Trent Grisham to that deal, because Trent Grisham does have 3 additional years of arbitration. And even though he's not a good hitter, he's proven to be a valuable player because of speed and defense. So I think having the extra 2 years after this year of arbitration, I think that helps a lot in terms of like the value in that deal. So I think you'd still have to give Trent Grisham plus, but I don't know if it would cost that much. That's just my thought. Maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe you're right on that. But either way, like still. So then you go and you trade for. So then you would move him, right? Let's say you move Grisham and go and get Castillo. Well, then you have to go and move Nick Martinez. And yes, it's an upgrade, but like, are you really trying to do all of that stuff just to kind of change up a bunch of stuff and then have 1 extra year of a guy? Don't think it makes that much sense. I think it makes a lot more sense to not screw with the Padres rotation this year. Rock with the 7 guys you have. And next year, when you hit free agency, Isaac, I also agree with you. I think Musgrove and Clever are going to be back. Those are the 2 guys that I'm banking on returning. Well, then you need to go and get another arm. So either you sign a guy or you trade for a starter then. Maybe it makes more sense to trade for Luis Castillo in the offseason. Now he could get traded before the deadline. But, a guy like that where he's on the last year of his deal, similar to Manaea this year, I think that makes way more sense when you're kind of coming at it from a team building perspective. But still, Luis Castillo, sweet player. If he does end up in a Padres uniform, I mean, that'd be awesome. We'll be happy come late in the season when he's on the mound. But it's just like, I don't know if it makes that much sense for where they're at right now. So we'll see how it plays out. But if you guys are really high on potentially bringing Luis Castillo in, let us know. If you think it doesn't make any sense either, also let us know about that. But I think it's going to do it for this video. So thank you all for listening. And we will have a video out about the top 3 positions of need for the San Diego Padres. That was actually scheduled to come out today, because of the Castillo news and the Roe v. Wade stuff, we did want to bring that stuff up today. So that will be the episode on Saturday. But with that said, thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you all then.